Hey, everybody, welcome back to Think Business Live. Looking forward to having Melanie Pump back. Melanie, it's great to see you again. Looking forward to talking with you. You are a CFO, you're an author, MelaniePump.com. Your company is Brane Inc., but we're really going to talk a little bit about your book, which is Detox, Managing Insecurity in the Workplace. And, one of the things I thought we could talk about right now is, there seems to be in this changing world as we are in right now, and, with interest rates on the rise and inflation and a war in the Ukraine, which my heart goes out to everyone in the Ukraine. But there seems to be uncertainty, right, in things, more uncertainty today than even a few months ago. So I was thinking maybe you could talk a little bit about how you talk about that in your book, and how that, how that kind of intertwines with the work you do on managing insecurities.
Yeah, and it really does, because there is so much uncertainty in the world today, as you said. And when I started writing my book, which was at the beginning of the pandemic, I really saw the impact that uncertainty had in the workplace, because our brains actually view uncertainty as a threat. Like we want to have some certainty around what's coming, so that we can prepare ourselves for it. So it really increases the level of insecurity that we feel when we don't have that. So as leaders, we can play a role in reducing the overall uncertainty that our employees have by creating some of that certainty in the workplace.
So, but I want to talk about something you just said, because I agree. And I think, we see uncertainty as a threat. And so how can you, what's the mindset you need to get in, and how do you prepare? I mean, how do you create certainty in the uncertainty to prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, then the challenge with that is that our brains, when we see uncertainty, will try to establish certainty for ourselves. But often when we do that, we go to the worst case scenario. So that is why in the workplace, we need to make sure that we're being transparent about what is happening, because otherwise it is our human nature to kind of go, okay, what's the worst case and how do we prepare for that? But that can create a lot of negativity in the workplace.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So what do leaders, do today, right? So it used to be that you could manage by walking and talk management, but today we're in a hybrid world. Many people are working from home. Many people are in the office, a couple of days a week. How are you doing this for people today? It's just, I think it's harder to manage people today than it was pre-pandemic.
It absolutely is. And we just need to be a lot more intentional and make sure that we establish the basic building blocks. So, taking it right back to what is your company's identity? What's your mission, vision, values? Having those things clear and having them really align with how the business, make sure the business walks the talk of what those are. Even that in itself is creating a base of certainty. People know what their employer is about. They know what factors are going to come in when decisions. And that's really, really important and helps establish that base.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. One of the things you talk about in your book is the reality of insecurity, that we all have it. And one of the things that I talk to, it doesn't matter if it's a C-level exec in a Fortune company or a solopreneur or anything in between, salesperson. One thing I hear a lot, I actually heard it today, was people suffering from imposter syndrome. And when you're not around people to pump you up, to encourage you, what do you do if somebody's, in that world, and how are they're feeling insecure because they have imposter syndrome? How do you get them? How do you recognize it and then get them out of that?
Yeah. And that is, imposter syndrome, it is a very real thing. A lot of us, as you get promoted through your career and you advance, it can be hard to maintain the confidence in your own abilities. And I would say now today it is even harder. And again, it comes back to that: be intentional and make sure that you're giving feedback on performance. Because when we don't see people on a regular basis, we're not saying thank you. We're not telling them as much that they're doing a good job. So that makes these intentional performance discussions even more important. And I would say both about telling people they're doing a good job to help reduce the imposter syndrome, But also when things aren't meeting expectations, make sure you share that as well, because people tend to know when they're not meeting expectations. And if feedback isn't given, that makes them even more insecure because they know something's not quite right, but they're not being told how they can improve. And that will also increase that insecurity and magnify the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So I love what you're talking about. And I think feedback is critical. Another thing you talk about in your book is the impact of toxic leadership. And to me, when I see in companies toxic leadership, and we're talking about the impact of uncertainty, that creates a very eggshell, uncertain culture. So can you talk about that, especially in the world we're in today, which is very hybrid?
Yeah. And not knowing what to expect from people also is creating uncertainty. So, there are some leaders who can have really unpredictable behaviors. I talk about actually Jekyll and Hyde behaviors in the book, and how that can even be harder than somebody who's just in a bad mood all the time.
Right.
Walk around on eggshells because they don't know who they're going to get. So as much as we can, as leaders, try to be as stable as possible and have our behaviors be reasonably predictable rather than, flying off the handle at unexpected times, because that really will impact the feeling of uncertainty in the workplace when people don't know what they're going to get from their leader.
Yeah. One of the things as a business coach I find is that what people want from their leaders is predictability, consistency, and accessibility.
Right.
And if you're toxic, you can't provide that, you can't give that, and people can't get that from you.
Right. And then that just spreads in the workplace.
And it just spreads, right? Yes. And so can you talk about the importance of what helps heal and create things to be a more certain culture?
Yeah. And a key piece in that is transparency. So, and if a work environment has had some toxicity, it will take time and consistency to rebuild that. But ensuring that we are transparent when decisions are made or when there are issues, so that employees feel trusted and they feel like they will be informed when something goes wrong, that can create a lot of comfort in the work environment and help to heal that toxicity. But I especially in today's world, I do really recommend, if you think you're communicating enough, I'll probably need to communicate a little bit more. So it's even that over communication, because we don't have that same kind of regular cadence of communication. We need to push a little bit further and even over communicate.
Yeah, I think that's so important. You're talking about transparency. I have over 1,300 episodes of this podcast, and one of my first 4 interviews was with Howard Behar, the former president of Starbucks, a division of. And he wrote a great book called "It's Not About the Coffee." And he shared a story that he had to let a lot of people go. And he accidentally, I may be getting some of this story wrong, but he accidentally lost the list, or someone lost the list and they found it. I think it was maybe on the copier. And so they had this emergency meeting, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to tell people? How are we going to spin this? Right. And his secretary said, why don't you just tell him the truth?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he said, you're right. So he got up there at this company meeting and said, here is the truth. Here's the transparency. And he said, everybody totally was like basically being empathetic towards him. Like, okay, what can we do? How can we do? But to that point, I love the book It's Not About the Coffee, Howard Behar. It's a great, great book.
But it's that
transparency. It's just the authenticity. People sometimes say, well, what's authenticity and transparency? That's what it is.
That's what it is. Being real, because people will take, as long as they believe what you're saying, even if it's bad news, they'll take it better. But if you give them something that isn't the direct information, or you withhold information, people sense that. Yeah. And that will create more of a negative reaction and anxiety than just being honest from the start.
Yeah. When I was in commercial real estate, when a deal would go under contract, I would always say to the seller, they're going to go into due diligence. Is there anything you didn't tell me that they will discover? Because discovery ruins, can kill a deal, right? Yes. People know what to expect during due diligence. So I love everything you're talking about. Quick speed round, Melanie. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
Exactly what we just talked about, to be authentically myself, and that has done me well.
All right, good. I love that. Recent favorite book and why?
Recent favorite book, it was by Adam Grant, and it's Give and Take by Adam Grant.
Yeah, great author.
You know,
Great
the beauty
author.
of that relationship.
And my last question is, one thing that every person can do to turn uncertainty into certainty is?
Transparency.
All right. I love it. Tell people where they can buy your book, where they can connect with you and learn more about you, Melanie.
My book is available on Amazon, and you can go to my website, melaniepump.com, or certainly connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
It's great. Melanie, this has been a great talk. I'm so glad that you came back on the show to talk about the impact of uncertainty, which is also talked about deeply in your book. And I appreciate you talking about transparency and authenticity and how to turn uncertainty into certainty and to be a leader that people want to follow. Think Community. The book is Detox on Amazon by Melanie Pump, melaniepump.com. Check it out and reach out to Melanie if she can help. Melanie, thanks. This was great. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.